What's up, everybody? It's Rob from the Sage Tower, and we are here to talk about tabletop news, all sorts of stuff going on in the tabletop world, and just anything to do with D&D, Pathfinder, and all sorts of news. We're going to start off with some interesting topics to discuss first, and then who knows where it will take us. So the first one I wanted to bring was news that came out a few days ago from Larian Studios. They were talking a bit at GDC and speculation about the future of Baldur's Gate 3. I'll pop out this. I believe this excerpt is from PC Gamer, where they discussed it. I couldn't find the actual, if there was an actual text of the interview. And it is bad news for anyone hoping for a Baldur's Gate 3 expansion or Baldur's Gate 4. The company is finished with the D&D adventure and is moving on to something else. Their next big project won't be Baldur's Gate. And they don't make DLCs, they don't make expansions, which is true. They never really made D&D expansions or, expansions for Divinity, which is their big kind of IP that they made. And I think a lot of people were upset over this because of obviously the success over Baldur's Gate 3 and the popularity of it, maybe leading to a Baldur's Gate 4 and whatnot. I think it's because, especially the one good thing about this really is they want to work on their own universe, their own world. They don't want to be tied or kind of shoehorned to the Dungeons and Dragons brand and the limitations for some of the stuff they can do in just that kind of bubble. Yes, it's a big, very popular IP. Yes, it's had its drama over the past few years in terms of all sorts of things that we've discussed on this channel, but them wanting to work on maybe a Divinity 3, maybe a brand new game entirely, learning from some of the stuff from Baldur's Gate, from Divinity, to make another cool RPG game with a different kind of adventure. So I think this is actually a really exciting thing to actually see and actually have this kind of new adventure and something new. Now, they didn't specify, but they said something new is, and then not what you think. But does that mean it could be a new IP entirely and maybe not a Divinity 3? I know Divinity Original Sin is a big game, it takes a lot of time to make probably. So maybe they're having a different project in the works that they'll surprise us with in the coming years. Who knows? I'm very curious to know what your guys' thoughts are on the next step for Larian Studios and kind of how they handle this. Do you agree that they shouldn't do DLC for Baldur's Gate 3 or a Baldur's Gate 4? And should they just focus on the new project, a new IP, and do them because they hit the puck out with these games all the time, in my opinion. The next one that I want to talk about is the news I believe it came during an interview with Brennan Lee Mulligan, the Dungeon Master for Dimension 20, kind of all those different stories there. I believe they're doing a World Beyond Numbers, and it's a D&D campaign game, and they were talking a bit about why using D&D mechanics for the system. And I wanted to pop up this little quote. I'll pop it on the screen for you guys. I'm basically questioning the idea of D&D being a combat game and such, and calling D&D a combat-oriented game would be sort of like looking at a stove and well, this has nothing to do with food. You can't eat metal. Clearly, this contraption is for moving gas around, having a clock on it. If it was about food, there would be some food here. So what he's saying is the food is his favorite part. That because D&D has so many combat mechanics, you have to tell a story that people, not him, say you have to tell a story through combat. The game is going to be combat related. He disagrees. He says that the least interested part is improvisational storytelling. So he needs the system of the game to handle the combat part, because that's the least interesting part that he likes, while he takes care of the emotions, the character, the world building, the relationships. That's stuff that he understands, and he doesn't understand how an arrow moves through fictional airspace. And that has kind of caused a little spark in the TNT RPG Twitterverse and stuff. And it's interesting why it has. So the reason, part of why I feel like it's caused such an issue is D&D an orientated game? Yes or no? Now, I think part of the reason why this got so much is because obviously you have these big, you're not going to be Critical Role. You're not going to have these rich, deeply telling stories. You're going to have players who do not care one bit about your massive town you build or this NPC or that NPC. They're just not going to care about them. And maybe they do want a comic game. Maybe they want that game where they just go around chopping stuff and you know, killing orcs or goblins or dragons or whatever have you. And some people with games are very combat orientated. For myself, most of the games I play are adventure paths, so published adventures. And while there is a lot of, you know, RP scenarios in the adventure, yes, there's a lot of combat in these adventure path modules. They have set levels you gotta hit here, here, and here. So it makes sense that they want you to kind of go for these certain things. That being said, there's 2 points for this. One, the idea that D&D is a combat game, probably because the social mechanics are usually kind of not that great in most of them. Like, a lot of these games have social encounters, and it's really just rolling dice. It's, you know, there's not much there, and there's really a little, you know, there's definitely a lot more substance in the combat aspect than in the social aspect, where, you know, diplomacy, deception, intimidation is sometimes used, and like very rarely isn't used that often in some cases. For instance, I don't remember the last time that my party had to like use disguise kits and use deception to sneak into a place. You know, they used intimidation to demoralize people, but that's because in Pathfinder it gives you frighten, which is a debuff. And diplomacy, of course, always is gonna be popular. There are other systems that are more storytelling, narrative-based systems. My personal favorite are like the Power by the Apocalypse systems, which you can go a whole 3-4 hour session in those and maybe make 3 or 4 rolls the whole night, because it's just a very story-rich system, as opposed to combat. Those systems, I would almost argue the combat mechanics are lacking in those systems, almost to like how the social ones are lacking in D&D. Going back to the actual quote, it kind of is talking about how, you know, why did they choose D&D for their system instead of a different one? And it's, like I said, it's been blown up. People have opinions on both sides. You know, D&D is a game, and yes, there's a lot of combat mechanics to it, but I know when I used to watch Critical Role, I watched like campaign 1, I made it probably halfway through campaign 2 or so, that, you know, there was instances, and a lot of people have it documented, of course, online, where combat mechanics, D&D mechanics, kind of got bent a little bit. Mechanics in the game were kind of bent to tell the story more. Some people don't mind that; they want the storytelling. But to me, as like a GM and someone watching, it kind of does take me out of it a little bit when I watch these games and I know for a fact, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how that is supposed to go as written. That was like a blatant like edit to the rules just to make the game kind of cool or make it a story thing. And sometimes it can take you out of it as someone who wants to watch these games, because some people do watch them not just for the story, but to see, like, you know, how a table is ran in a professional setting. And I feel like that those people don't, saying that almost gets you ostracized a little bit, in the sense of, well, you're not, you know, who cares, as long as the story's being told. Yes, but everyone's game isn't having this intense story. We're not all professional actors who are playing these games. So I want to see the mechanics. I want to see mechanically how this party goes through this. I want to see with the storytelling and all the stuff. But if I can know that this party is doing something that my party technically can't, for following the rules, it does hurt a bit. So this was the other kind of big topic that came out. I wanted to kind of drop it here. What is your thoughts on this kind of tweet, this whole drama talk debate from Brennan Lee Mulligan? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, be sure to click that button, follow the channel for more tabletop content, tabletop news. Always looking to bring either new tabletop information, board game information, or what have you. Let me know down below, and thank you guys for watching this video.